So if everyone can please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, I appreciate it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Irene, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Gus, do you mind speaking closer to the microphone?
This one?
Yes. The video can get you. Thank you.
Irene, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Here we go. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Councilmember Bagby.
She said present.
Councilmember Brigham. Can you hear her?
No. Mary Ann's here. I see her. Can you hear us, Mary Ann?
Can you hear us yet? Councilmember Brigham.
Let's go on.
Okay. Councilmember Cruz.
Here.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Turner.
Here?
And Mayor Walter.
Here. Now, Mary Ann, can you hear us? You got your mic on. You have to put your mic on, Mary Ann.
She's on mute.
Yeah. Can you turn your microphone on, Mary Ann?
It's mute.
There you go.
Councilmember Brigham, present? Thank you.
Okay. Well, as you can see, hopefully we can pull this together. I have very limited skills, but we'll try and make this work. The first thing I'd like to do is read a little statement, if I could, please. In order to minimize the spread of COVID-19 virus, the regular meeting will be conducted pursuant to the provision of the Governor's Executive Order N-2920. Some or all members of the City Council will be participating in the meeting remotely via teleconferencing or other electronic means. Consistent with Executive Order N-2920, which suspends certain requirements of the Brown Act. And Irene, do we have any visitors? Can you tell?
No.
Okay, well, I'm still going to read this anyhow. This meeting is conducted pursuant to the provision of the Governor's Executive Order N-2920, which suspends certain requirements of the Brown Act. If you are watching the live stream, we're available at https://bit.ly/2R20DM4 and wish to make either a general comment or to comment on specific items as is being heard, please submit your comments to the City Clerk, and her email address should be flashing on the screen, I believe, but I'm going to read it for you. It's iwerby@ci.cloverdale, CLOVERDALE.ca.US. Every effort will be made to read your comment into the record within the 3 minutes of time allotted for public comment. But some comments may not be read due to the time limitations. Email comments will be accepted until the conclusion of the staff's presentation for the specific item. But Irene, correct me if I'm wrong, if we don't get them in the record, they'll still be made part of the record.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. So with that being said, Melanie, I really do miss you here, but I really enjoy the extra space I have alongside the chair here, so thank you for teleconferencing.
Sorry, I can't kick you a reminder now and again.
Conflict of interest declaration. Does anyone have a conflict of interest?
No.
Okay. Agenda review, regular session, any changes? David?
Mayor, council members, staff does not have any changes to the agenda.
Okay. Jose, thank you for coming. And Susie, where are you? That's a nice looking location background. Okay, sorry. Public comments. Anyone wishing to address the city council on items that do not appear on the agenda may do so. You can email them to our city clerk. We see no one here at the Performing Arts Center. So if there are none, we're going to go ahead and close that. And we're going to come down to proclamations and presentations. And there's two of them, and there's no one here to receive them, but we're going to go ahead and at least read the titles. This is a proclamation dated April the 11th to the 17th. Let me start that over. Proclaiming that April the 11th to the 17th, 2020, as Week of the Young Children, and a proclamation proclaiming the week of April the 19th to the 25th as National Library Week. There is no student liaison report. None of them have joined us. So with that being said, there's a consent calendar. All items on the consent calendar will be considered with one motion unless an item is requested to be pulled. Do we have any requests to pull any of the consent calendar items?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I didn't want to pull anything from the consent, but I just wanted to acknowledge Library Week. Just because they're closed, doesn't mean that they aren't providing services. I've been using the audiobook app Libby, which is free, and I've also been taking advantage of the free lynda.com trainings that are available with your library card. They've been doing the Sonoma County Library has been doing a great job of doing digital outreach while they've been closed, and I just wanted to acknowledge them as part of the proclamation.
Thank you. Anyone else, would you like to have an item pulled off the consent calendar? Seeing none, then can I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second.
And Irene, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Councilmember Bagby,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Turner,
Aye.
Councilmember Cruz,
Aye.
Councilmember Brigham,
Aye.
and Mayor Wolf.
Aye. So before we move on, before we move on, can you hear me?
Yep.
Marta, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? Okay. I just want to go back for a second. I had written a note here and I forgot to do it, but I just want to take the opportunity on behalf of the whole city council to thank everyone for their hard work ever since this pandemic has started. Irene, I want to thank you for your technology portion of this, getting us all signed up and on our iPads and zooming away. I appreciate that. Susie, you and your staff for keeping everything running, processing the water payments that we're getting, and just keeping up on all that tasks that you do. And of course, David and Kevin, thanks for keeping everyone in the loop. I must get 2 or 3 emails a day, rather lengthy ones from Kevin. I'm sorry, from David and Kevin. Chief Ferguson and our offices, thank you for keeping us safe. Mark at Public Works and your staff, thank you for everything that you guys are doing. We can't forget Nina at the chamber. Her and Savannah are just doing a fantastic job keeping the webpage up to date with the latest information. And Councilmember Bagby, especially you, a big thank out for keeping us connected with the county and in the league and jumping on phone calls with me. I appreciate that. And that's about it. So at this point, why don't we go ahead and move to communications? David, anything?
No communications, Mayor.
Okay. There's no public hearing, there's no new business, there's no subcommittee items, subcommittee reports. Would anyone like to say anything about their particular subcommittee?
I'll speak up. You know, yesterday we held the Finance Administration and Police subcommittee meeting via Zoom, and we talked about some, you know, we're continuing to continue on regular business, just like the particular, as those mentioned, the early leak detection. We think we might have actually found, thanks to Susie, a better solution that we need to move forward with. And we did discuss the business license and TOT, and we are probably going to be tabling that item for the time being. Several of the items were tabled. I'll just kind of bring out some of the highlights. As far as Assembly Bill 5 is concerned, you know, that was a really hot topic a couple of weeks ago, but even before the pandemic struck, Gus and I were both in on meetings with either the governor or our local legislators, and they're aware in Sacramento that this is an issue. That Assembly Bill 5, well, like the governor said, it was an evolving issue, and so they're aware. But you know, given the current crisis with everybody, you know, working from home or being laid off, obviously it's a back burner issue. But on Friday, I do have that legislative committee call, and I will try to see where that is, if that is something that is still going to be taken up this year, or if we think it might have been overtaken by that. So I'll get an update for that on Friday and try to let everybody know. Water disconnection policy we discussed, and that is before us tonight. And then we did discuss a possible moratorium on fireworks and fireworks sales, and that's going to come before the council at a future meeting. We also discussed fees for commercial cannabis permits. That was an issue that had come up before the pandemic, and that's actually something that I'm going to follow up with again on our Friday legislative call, because before we can really have enough information to move on that, we've really got to figure out where the CDC is on that, and if there are going to be bailouts. Senator McGuire had also mentioned that cannabis businesses are definitely on the state's radar because they're not on the federal government's radar, as well as undocumented workers in a couple of other areas that we're starting to see the governor and the legislators comment about. So I'll get an up-to-date report on that on Friday and get that information out. Was there anything else, City Manager Kelly, that I'm missing from the subcommittee that we should bring up this evening?
Councilmember Bagby, fellow council members, the other item that was discussed
David,
by the
you are muted.
Oh, let me
Okay,
take my mute off.
there you go.
Thank you, Councilmember Bagby. One of the items that was discussed at the Finance, Admin, and Police Subcommittee meeting that's also on the agenda tonight is the annual transfer of additional funds that resulted from the audit to the reserve accounts. There was quite a bit of discussion about the transfer of those funds and the position that the city's in with each of those reserve accounts. It obviously was provided on this agenda as an informational item, as it was on the Finance, Admin, and Police Subcommittee agenda, but I just think that's just an important report to point out, and is beneficial for the community to take a look at if they have that opportunity, because it shows the prudent financial management practices that the city council has implemented and that city staff is furthering by making those transfers. And it may be very well that the emergency that we find ourselves in, needing to look at those emergency reserves that we've established to help us address the emergency crisis that we find ourselves in, especially as we transition, hopefully sooner rather than later, to a recovery phase.
Thank you, David. Will that conclude your report,
Yes.
Melanie?
That concludes it. Thank you so much.
Okay. Next is anyone else on their subcommittees? Okay, seeing no one, then we're going to go ahead and move on to council reports. Anything other than what was submitted in writing?
Yeah, I'll just add, Gus, that I compiled mine and got it in at the last minute today. And so everybody can take a look at, what I've been up to and who I've been talking to, and just, for the YouTube audience that doesn't necessarily want to go to the file. I am the council's representative on the legislative committee. I'm the president of the League Redwood Division, and I'm also on the board at the League of Cities, and I'm pretty much on the phone most of the week. And I am on those regular legislative calls on every Friday, which not only have the members of the other city councils that are on the legislative committee, it also has all of the representatives of all of the area assembly members and our senators. And right now they're all each of the assembly members and senators are taking turns being on that call. So if you have any hot issues that you need to bring up, please try to get them to me by Friday. And I am, working with the city manager and the mayor to get the information back to them that they need. And there's some information in my report. So if there are any state issues, please do let me know what I can do to help, or any concerns. And I'll try to get updates. The issue is I was going to do a detailed report and of each of the meetings, and by the time we have our meeting, things get overtaken by events. So they maybe give us some early information on a Friday, and then by the time we have our council meeting, the governor has already done a press release on it. So I haven't had because I'm getting deluged with information. I'm not. I don't need to repeat what you're already getting from the League of Cities and, probably from the governor's office. So, but if you have any, hot issues, please do let me know, and I'll try to bring them up on those Friday calls.
Thank you.
I do have something to report.
Sure. Councilmember Cruz?
Yes, I also represent the city and the council on the Redwood Empire Division on Community Services. We had a meeting last week, and pretty much it's covered in all of our daily reports from the League of Cities. I am also in the committee for Latino Affairs for the county, which is led by Supervisor Gore. We have a weekly meeting on Wednesdays, and we discuss issues that impact the Latino community. Right now, we are addressing access for students. I am happy to inform that the Kiwanis Club of Cloverdale have donated $1,000 for hotspots for the Cloverdale School Unified School District, so that all students can have access to the internet. I'm also in touch with the people in Corazon for the Undocu Fund, that is for all those workers that are without the proper documentation so they can have access. And I had worked with city manager to assure that there's appropriate distribution of food in the city. And that is something that is a big concern for Latinos Unidos and the Cooperativa Campesina out of Sacramento. So working with all those folks and many other announcements that come in English and Spanish, I have been able to edit a few things here and there, and I continue to work closely with the county, making sure that all the information is translated into Spanish. Thank you.
Thank you. Council members, any other verbal reports that you'd like to give?
I could give, Marta, if you want to get together, I can give you an update on the people down at the river who are actually getting food and who aren't and all of that stuff. So if you would like to give me a call, I'd be happy to share that with you.
I will. Thank you.
Okay. If there's nothing else, if there's nothing else, I'm going to move to legislative reports. Jose, I see you here. Is there anything to share with us, or David?
Mayor, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So just on legislative reports and just changes, I was going to have it under my comments, but I did send the council just an update on the issue regarding evictions and eviction moratoriums and different protections for Cloverdale's residents. This, like everything else, has been just evolving every day. I mean, we keep getting, you know, I'm on a conference call about this and I get an email that something has changed. There's been a change as even this Monday, but just again, more detail in the memo I sent the council. But bottom line, there was a lot of, as the council knows, there was the executive order that got brought up that allowed for local jurisdictions to adopt a moratorium on evictions. The local jurisdictions, some of them started considering this. The county specifically ended up doing a moratorium. I think we discussed that at the last meeting, where the council was interested in pursuing a moratorium. The reason why it's not on your agenda is that we kept following the issue. On March 27th, the governor actually also did another executive order imposing a moratorium, or basically stating that that stopping evictions for residential if it had to do with COVID-19 reasons. So if the reason for them not paying was due to COVID-19, we were going to give the council an update on whether the council wanted to move forward and still adopt additional protections for residents, specifically commercial or something that's different than the county. Just Monday, the Judicial Council, the California Judicial Council, which is basically controls the courts, they ended up having imposing some rules or coming up with orders or rules. One of them, very specific to this, is that no longer would the court be taking up evictions, whether it was commercial or residential. And so this put, regardless of whether it was COVID-19 or not, unless there was some kind of public health or safety reason. So we see this trend of different executive orders, different laws, different things changing, even from the Judicial Council, on what to do with how do they protect people during this time period. Again, I sent a memo to the council. Please read it. Let me know if you have any questions. But the reason why you don't see an ordinance in front of you, and we may bring a discussion in front of the council, but there are several jurisdictions that are currently discussing this and deciding not to move forward with a moratorium on their own, given all the protections that are already afforded by either the executive orders of the governor, the county's ordinance, or the Judicial Council's new rules that they just implemented on Monday.
Thank you, Jose. David, anything on the legislative report?
I don't have any reports on the.
Gus is muted again.
Mayor, Councilmember Brigham indicated that you're muted again.
Marta's muted too.
Okay.
I need to be mute.
Okay.
That's fine, yeah. Well, so if I may, Mr. Mayor,
Please.
Okay, I guess the only thing I'd add is that, yeah, I read the memo, Jose, thanks so much for sending it out. And that's a really good example of an issue that some other cities have, they rushed in because, like, for example, the city of Sonoma said, well, we're also going to do, we're going to include commercial properties. And that was like last week. And then this week we get the notice that the judiciary is saying, we're just not going to see these. And so that's kind of, it illustrates the importance of kind of staying up to date with this, like kind of every day, and making sure, and that's one of the real challenges here. So I'm going to ask the staff to help keep us up to date, because if we go to lobby, whether it's the league or another example was wanting relief from USDA loans, and we were thinking that it was going to be just a division issue, and it looks like the league is probably going to take that on a statewide basis. So I'll be able to sit back from that. The Redwood division will be able to sit back from that a little bit, and the league's really going to take that. So that's kind of one of the things that's the symptom of what's going on right now. Things are really fluid because you're thinking, oh, the state's not doing anything, what are cannabis businesses going to do, because they're not going to be eligible for federal relief, or what are undocumented workers going to do? And then we come to find out that, that McGuire is working on that, the governor is working on that. So it is really, it's one of the things that is really challenging right now, is keeping up on, what we might be concerned about locally. And then lo and behold, a day or two later, we're seeing this being picked up at the state level. So, so the staff has been doing a really great job of kind of keeping us up to date, so we don't trip over ourselves. And the mayor and David and I have, been doing regular calls just for that reason, so that we can, keep each other up to date on what we're, doing. Maybe a city manager call, mayor's call, and legislative call. So, I mean, it's a tough call, because it's like, I don't want to send out more emails, and I'm getting so many emails, but at the same time, if we have some up-to-date information, let's make sure that we get it out to everybody, so that we can be lobbying on the real issues and be effective.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment here about the?
Yes, please.
The most emails I'm getting, the most frustration I'm seeing from the public is, I think number one is that they all are trying to apply for unemployment, and the system's crashing. They're not getting phone calls back. It's a totally failed system. And it's really making the anxiety out there. I bet you I get 30 or 40 calls a day on just that. Just the fact that the unemployment system is not working. It keeps crashing, and I keep saying to them, I understand your frustration, but you just have to keep trying. You have to go back to the website and try over and over and over. And some of them have tried for 2 or 3 days and not even been able to get in. And so that would be one thing I would say, is that we need to get more out there about the fact that you maybe are not going to get on to that state system for unemployment for a little bit of a while. But you might want to bring that up, you guys, if you're going to be talking on a state level. Other thing I'm hearing from small business people, I've gotten a number, like a large number of emails and phone calls about that, in that it's showing that either they don't qualify almost immediately, which I think is a glitch in the system, and then crashes yet again. And so I've been sending them out to Redwood Credit Union and to different banks, because they have to speak to the banks first on some issues, and they're having the same problem. So I think a little bit more information out there for the public to let them know that this is a phenomenon we've never seen before, and the backlog of trying to deal with the government on any level right now is not just frustrating, but makes you want to drink or whatever it is you do. So any way that we could help the public realize that, no, there really is something coming, and I'm sorry that you them 4 times or 5 times, but you have to keep trying.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate. Yeah, so in every single one of my ledge meetings, I am saying exactly that, is that, you know, Cloverdale is made up of small businesses, and those are our employers, and those are the people who are paying mortgages, and those are the people who are at risk. So, I mean, you know, I've been repeating it every single week to every legislator on the line and their district reps, and they're probably getting sick of hearing it, but I don't care. So
No, don't care. Just
yeah, I do not care. So
good job.
I would also reiterate that, you know, in addition to applying for unemployment, everybody who is eligible needs to apply for the SBA small business loan.
Well, that's what I was talking about. They keep trying and trying and trying, and they aren't getting through.
Well, Jeff and I logged in this afternoon, and we did it in about 13 minutes.
So you got in.
We got in and we applied, and it took us 13 minutes.
The problem is being able to get in.
Yeah, I don't know what that issue is, but that website seems to be up and running and working, and, you know, we'll see what we qualify for. But I would urge everybody to, you know, go ahead, get online and start applying, because there is going to be a backlog. But, you know, but I also, the second point that I wanted to make on that, and I should have mentioned it earlier, is that Jason Lyles in Senator McGuire's office is taking point on any issues with taxes or small businesses. And I'm actually in the process of setting up an appointment with him and members of the chamber, so that we can, you know, figure out how we can address those issues that businesses are having in Cloverdale, as far as applying or figuring out what they're eligible for. And I think one of the bottlenecks was we kind of had to have everything, like the CARES Act had to pass, the state had to.
Everybody gets that.
Yeah, we're kind of in a gap period where we had to figure out, okay, what's the lay of the land? What are people going to be eligible for? But
I get that.
Yeah, Senator McGuire's office is being very responsive on this. We have a direct contact. We need to set up, and what we're going to do is set up a call to let Jason know what the local business owner who's having issues, and what he'll be able to do about it from the senator's office. So that is in the works, and that'll be a resource that we'll be able to offer to folks in Cloverdale who have questions.
Okay.
Well, you know,
That's good. Okay, go ahead.
not to add doom and gloom to this, and I just hear a big echo. I mean, what should I do here?
Yeah, we're all hearing an echo. Who cares?
You sound good now.
Okay. Well, I've spoken with some folks over at Exchange Bank today, and since Monday, they've taken 1,700 applications. And if you didn't have it in by 3 o'clock today, they were shutting down their application online, simply because they want to process everything that they've gotten in. I've spoken with Redwood Credit Union. They're only taking their customers first, and then they were going to process them, and then they'll take on other individuals, but their customers first, and that's the same with Exchange Bank.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know how they can get around that, but, you know, or if there's anything our legislators can do, but it just seems like, you know, no bank really wants to jump in with 2 feet and get this ball rolling because of the.
It's a real problem. The other thing is the SB 5 that you said that they're kind of on.
AB 5.
Or AB, sorry. I keep doing that. I don't know why. AB 5, it's not moving fast enough. It's got to move faster, or we've got to find out that there's some kind of relief, because the nonprofits that I'm seeing around town, and some out of town in the Sonoma County area, there's many of them that are right now planning on closing down, period. They cannot weather 2 or 3 months with absolutely no income. And so they are facilitating the slow, I'm going to close this whole thing down. So if you could please, I mean, I've told Mike McGuire, I've told Jim Wood, I've told James Gore, everybody that I know, that this can't really take a horribly back seat, because rural communities like our own are going to suffer greatly for this, more so than the bigger cities or even bigger towns.
Well, yeah, and that's one of the points
Cloverdale runs on nonprofits.
That's what I try to bring up, is that so many times in rural cities across California, the same functions that other cities have in a rec department, or
Exactly.
they run their senior center, they're run by nonprofits. And so when they go under, what is going to be the second or third wave of the tsunami?
Oh, it's going to be
absence of those services.
Yeah, it's going to be overwhelmingly so in this town, and in a lot of the littler towns where I'm talking to other council members or whoever. It's like it's
Fort Bragg, Willits, everybody in Mendocino, everybody.
Oh, absolutely.
Humboldt, Lake, we're all in the same boat, and
I don't think they're taking it horribly seriously at this point. Even the people that I'm talking to, they'll say, "Oh yeah, we're really aware of that," but that's bullshit.
I don't think so. No, I think that when the governor the governor volunteered it at a meeting of the League of Cities board just a couple weeks ago.
But it's not fast enough.
Okay, well, stuff has come up in the meantime. So.
Oh, I get that, I know. But I mean, I'm just, I guess, trying to push the fact that this has got to be brought forward very strongly. I mean, very strongly.
I think just the sheer volume, I don't know where to talk. Okay, never mind. If there's nothing else, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next subject, which is status update on current emergency. And that's going to be a presentation by our city manager and department heads. So if everybody can mute their mics and
Mayor, members of council, vice mayor, what staff would like to do today is provide council with an overview of our emergency response, really kind of give a status update on the preparedness action as well as our emergency response to date on the global pandemic that we're under relative to COVID-19 or the coronavirus. What I will kind of walk through here, and it's some of which council members have already touched on, is the very significant response, starting with the federal government, the state government, the county government, and then finally end with a discussion by each of our department heads on what actions and steps they're taking within their departments to be prepared and respond to this current emergency. I think the Councilmember Bagby mentioned the CARES Act, and that's one of three pieces of federal legislation that's been adopted by Congress to address coronavirus. The first of which was adopted pretty early on in March 6th, the Coronavirus Preparedness and Response Supplemental Appropriations Act. One of the pieces I did want to point out relative to that piece of legislation is it does offer loans to affected small businesses. And so there are some opportunities within that legislation. And really, in each of these pieces of federal legislation, there's multiple components that really need further evaluation to determine how they can provide assistance to businesses and also our community. Next was the Family First Coronavirus Response Act, which became law on March 18th. And then last but not least, on the federal side is the CARES Act, or otherwise known as the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, which is an unprecedented stimulus bill of $2 trillion to provide relief across the nation to families, businesses, states, and local governments. We understand that at least about 11 billion of that 2 trillion is going to be directed directly and specifically to California. And then there will be other components of that which are intended to provide relief to small businesses and local government. Our understanding is that some of the funding that will be provided isn't going to, at least for local government, isn't going to supplant some of the revenues that we anticipate losing but it will cover and address some of the direct costs that we are undertaking to respond to this emergency. That is something that we are on calls daily to understand in more detail what opportunities there are for our community. Again, it's a very lengthy piece of legislation, and our interest is to ensure that we explore all the avenues for the availability of those funds and to bring those back to our community to help address some of the health and economic impacts to our community. In the state of California, it's been amazing the amount of new legislation that's been coming primarily from the governor. The governor almost every day releases a new executive order that's been targeted to address the impacts. It's really best to kind of go to the governor's website and look at all the executive orders. So I won't cover them all here, but there's a couple I wanted to touch on. One that will, I think, have particular benefits for our community here in Cloverdale is legislation that will allow small businesses with sales and use taxes of up to $50,000 to defer those payments. Now, under the state law, it doesn't mean that they don't have to pay them, it just defers the timing. So it will be a benefit to businesses in terms of when those payments are required. And it's likely to have some impacts for the city in terms of cash flow because we rely on that revenue to pay for services, but it's intended to assist businesses during this current emergency. Governor Newsom also issued an executive order that's intended to protect homes and small businesses from water shutoff. That was just signed on April 2nd, and the staff had already taken proactive action to not proceed with water shutoffs due to non-payment. We understand that during this crisis, it's challenging for our residents to sometimes make payments on their water bills, and we moved very quickly to not continue with any water shutoffs. And so this executive order kind of memorializes that, but it reflects the governor's interest in trying to ensure that residents aren't continually impacted from utilities. The city attorney referenced earlier that the governor has taken significant action regarding evictions, and the two executive orders that are important there are N3720 and N3820, which not only established a statewide moratorium on evictions, but also empowered the Judicial Council to take necessary action to continue to conduct business and operate while responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. And so basically, it prohibits filing of eviction notices with the courts. In addition to that, at the state level, the CSAC, which is the legislative organization that supports counties, much like the League of California Cities, worked to establish deferment of all penalties relative to payment of property taxes. And I know our county board has taken similar action, or with the county auditor, which will provide direct relief to those property owners on payment of their property taxes. It doesn't relieve them of the tax, but it does relieve them of the penalties. Now, staff has been working really pretty much daily with our Sonoma County Emergency Operations Center. As you can see from the video, I'm, as Vice Mayor, we're wearing our face mask. That is a result of the recommendation by the County Public Health Officer to help reduce the potential spread of coronavirus. Some individuals are asymptomatic and can easily spread the virus, and face masks are guidance that is intended to help reduce the spread. And that is something that has been developed most recently is direct guidance coming out this weekend from the health officer. The recommendation isn't for the general public to wear the more protective N95 masks, because currently there's a shortage in the state and across the United States, in order to reserve those for our healthcare responders and our healthcare workers and our first responders. But what we're seeing is, based on the modeling data that was prepared by the Imperial College of London, who had done the modeling work for the Sonoma County Department of Public Health, is that the sheltering in place, the social distancing protocols, and other mitigations that are being implemented are flattening the curve. And what that means is that we're not experiencing the significant surge at our hospitals and our medical facilities that some other states are experiencing, and it's creating a lot of impact and overwhelming the systems in those states where they may not have implemented shelter in place early enough to help mitigate that. Doesn't mean people maybe won't ultimately become affected by the virus, but it'll certainly reduce the impact on our medical community. And what I do want to state is that I think it's important that we continue to stop the spread, stay home if you can, recognizing the important work that all of our essential workers are doing to keep the economy going and provide important services, but otherwise stay home and save lives. And that's kind of the important message that's being pushed out by our county EOC. As of this morning, we've heard that in terms of the total cumulative cases in Sonoma County, we're up to 120. We do see slight upticks in the cumulative cases, but of those 120 right now, 81 active cases, so we see a little bit of a downtick there, and 38 recovered. We just heard the news, it came out in the paper today, that the former police chief for the town of Windsor, one of our nearby town partners, was subject to coronavirus, and he did a pretty telling article in the Press Democrat about the impact of being affected by the coronavirus had on his personal health. It's a pretty telling story, but luckily he's one of those positive statistics of being recovered. In terms of the county EOC, the staff has been very actively engaged on daily calls, getting status updates both from the county health officer through the departmental operations center, as well as the director of emergency services at the emergency operations center, where there's been significant coordination with all the what we refer to as op area partners. So all of our cities, our special districts, including the schools, and transit agencies discuss the response to this current emergency crisis. There's been a number of task forces that have been stood up. One very important one is referred to as the ACS task force, or alternate care site task force. It was just announced today that by a press release from Sonoma County that there's been establishment of an ACS at Sonoma State University. The alternative care site is intended to provide additional capacity to our healthcare system in Sonoma County in the event of a surge of patients, and this will help provide relief to local area hospitals should we experience a significant surge that's beyond our capacity to address. And so that's a kind of an important mitigation measure that's attempted to be implemented. I'm just getting a quick message here by Councilmember. Okay, Melanie, Councilmember Bagby's is indicating she's logging back in. One other task force that we've been very significantly involved in is the homeless task force. I know our Assistant City Manager, Community Development Director is going to talk about that, and more specifically in terms of what we're doing here in Cloverdale. But the homeless task force has been stood up to help ensure that the homeless community is, some of the our sensitive population is addressed during this emergency. The operational area EOC has coordinated for utilization of our FEMA trailers that were granted through the state at the fairgrounds, and that will help house some of our housing population. And we're continuing to work on procuring the necessary services to help support that population during the emergency. As indicated by Councilmember Cruz, I have been overseeing for the City of Cloverdale participation on the Food Resources Task Force, and that's a discussion to ensure that there are adequate food supplies for distribution to our sensitive populations throughout Sonoma County, working on what's the forecasted need and working to procure and distribute that food, through to our food insecure in Sonoma County, and coordinating with our local organizations that require food service, including the Senior Center, as well as some of our senior housing developments. In addition to participating in op-area calls with the EOC, I've been on daily calls with all the city managers, and we've been coordinating on all of the federal and state legislation and working to ensure that we address the issues that have been identified by our community, and trying to address any shortcomings. And that's there's a lot of complexity in the legislation, and in terms of its interpretation, and ensuring that we are trying to do what we can to facilitate communication to our constituents. Really, and that's an issue where there's a lot of coordination with the mayor as well as council members through the league to make sure that the legislation reflects and addresses our interests, and then providing those updates to our city council. We've made every effort, as the developments on this emergency have been developing very rapidly, to push that information out via both our website, the city's website, www.cloverdale.net, as well as our Facebook page, and ensuring that our community is kept up to date on all the communications around the public health, the emergency crisis, and the economic resources. Mayor, what I'd like to do at this time is turn it over to our senior staff team. Each of them have been very busy, working through this emergency, whether they're providing and coordinating essential services, participating in relevant operational area calls in their subject matter topic, or just coordinating city services. So if I can, I'd like to call upon Chief Ferguson and kind of work through our departments to provide council with an update on their activities. Chief?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Thank you, David. Like David, I have also been participating in daily automation. At this point, those are taking place 7 days a week. I also participate in the Sonoma County Chiefs Association virtual meetings, which are taking place Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and those provide quite a bit of information from a law enforcement standpoint from each of the agency heads with some great guidance. And since all of this has begun, we've really reduced our staff to only providing essential functions, which is basically our patrol division and our dispatch center, and on rare occasions when needed, the community service officer. We continue and will continue to provide police services around the clock, but we have had to make some operational changes, and really the purpose of that was to limit exposure for our employees who are out there working the street. Some of that would entail responding to emergency calls and trying to handle non-emergency calls via telephone as best as possible. We've also resorted to utilizing the drone to really maximize the social distancing order, and putting that drone up in over like the river park and the open spaces. And we've been successful in having people come out of there and addressing them and giving them verbal warnings. So that's been very beneficial. We've also implemented protocols for on-duty related exposure incidents. We're really concerned about this as we move forward. We've set up a hotel sites to be able to handle the employees should they be exposed and need quarantine separate from their family. So we have a really robust protocol in place for that. We've made several purchases for personal protective equipment, including masks, full suits, glasses, nitrile gloves for both officers and dispatchers, and have at this point put mandatory orders in that you'll wear your PPE while making contact with the community members. And that's simply following the new face covering guidelines that was put out by the health officer. We've also made some purchases like Zoom licensing for this, and now the courts are going to start looking at doing preliminary hearings, so we wanted to be prepared for that. And we've developed a non-essential business activity violation protocol for businesses and residents that are failing to adhere to the shelter-in-place order, and we've been real successful with that. We've sent out in English and Spanish, which contain general health and safety information in response to COVID-19, and those have also been placed on our Facebook at Cloverdale Police Department. We have also reached out to senior center representatives and Clover Springs representatives via email and provided information for mass distribution to their personnel that they could specifically spoke with the hospital and having that happen, receiving a call a few days later to set up that time so that the vulnerable population would be able to have an opportunity to shop away from the public. And lastly, I just wanted to provide the council with a little bit of update of where we are statistically. These statistics begin from March 1st up until April 5th. We've handled approximately 64 calls related to COVID-19. And those are related to people calling us for information and or us being called out to various parks, businesses, things that are operating outside the shelter in place. As far as businesses, we've responded to 13 different incidents. Plaza, we've responded to 8 different incidents where multiple subjects were violating the social distancing order. As far as general subjects, we've contacted 5 different times. We've had incidents where we've had to educate individuals on social distancing. 7 in the different parks, 5 in the open space. School, we've had to deal with 4 incidents. And in total, we have issued 4 notices of violation regarding the shelter-in-place order. And that's what I have right now. So if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, Chief. Why don't we hold our questions till the end, if that's okay with everyone? So it looks like next on the report would be Mark Rincon, our city engineer.
Mayor, it looks like he stepped away from his iPad. Maybe we can move and circle back with our city engineer.
Sure. Okay, we seem to have lost Mark's connection. So why don't we go ahead with Kevin, Community Development. Could you give us a little update?
Sure, Mayor, council members. I too have been participating in the daily area op phone call. Also, I'm the rep for the semi-weekly homeless task force and the alternative sites task force. As David mentioned, the homeless task force is really focusing on getting not necessarily COVID positive patients off the street, but getting vulnerable populations. They are securing hotel rooms in Santa Rosa, 20 hotel rooms at the Astro Hotel on South Santa Rosa Avenue, as well as 10 trailers that are FEMA trailers that will be located at the fairgrounds. So we've been working through that. I did, just as a note, I did get word from Debbie Howell at the Alexander Valley Wellness that anyone found having symptoms in town who's homeless should go to the Alexander Valley Wellness for screening. So that would be the protocol on that. I've also helped coordinate the porta potty locations. You can see that was one of the things that came out of the homeless task force was the placement of porta potties and hand washing stations in all the cities that wanted them. I have requested one more hand washing station for the Broad Street porta potty that the city maintains. If we are unable to get it through the county, then we'll probably end up trying to do that ourselves. I've been trying to communicate out about what we're doing with building permits. Part of the stay-at-home mandate is some guidance on what kind of building permits we should be issuing and how we're handling building permits and building inspections. Really, it comes down to emergency inspections, things like electrical that are hazardous, very leaky roofs, water heaters, things like that that are urgent. Also, affordable housing projects are included in that. So I've been putting together flyers and trying to communicate that out. Also, I just want to point out that we are still processing applications and doing as much work as we can from home. Rafael has been hooked up with the at-home computer VPN, and so he's been working hard on trying to get through projects. We also have been servicing the cannabis industry, which it was deemed essential by the governor's order, and so we've been working with them to move permits along and process those. Also, I like to think that I've been trying to back David up when he needs any help on something. He's doing a tremendous amount of work, so whenever he needs help on some one-off projects, we heard today that they're short on pet food, so I've tried to call around, see if we can get some donations. Just a lot of little one-off things like that that David needs help with. That's what I've been up to. I think that most of our work in the community development department has been our regular work, processing applications, fielding phone calls, emails, moving the projects along that we already have in the pipeline.
Thank
I
you,
should
Kevin.
add, Mr. Mayor, I should add that I continue to communicate with Kevin anytime that I need postings regarding different updates dealing with either safety in the county or Spanish announcements. So he's been very helpful with that too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that's really been Irene. So thanks for saying it, but it's really is Irene doing that. So thank you.
Mark, are you ready? We're going to come back to you.
Yeah, sorry about that. Apparently you can't switch views on the iPad and look at your notes, so I'm going to wing this one. But as you can see from my write-up, I've provided staff alternating schedules, so there's no two staff are on duty at the same time to provide that physical distance. We continue to provide essential services, and when safety calls for it, I do have staff show up and they'll work on projects together, but with, of course, all the appropriate PPE, just so that they don't cross-contaminate if any one of them are feeling or are sick, I should say. Anyways, I continue to report in with the staff, keep them up to date. I too went ahead and purchased a GoToMeeting rather than Zoom, given all the problems that Zoom seems to be having. And so I've been using that with the supervisors and having a weekly meeting with them and catching up on key issues. One thing I wanted to mention in my write-up, I forgot to mention Parks and Recreation. They too are rotating their schedules, and I'll probably have them start to participate a little bit more together, but they don't necessarily share vehicles or tasks together. So they're able to get out there and meet some of the needs for our landscaping, just to upkeep it. The lawn is, the grass is getting longer than it needs to be. So I'll have to get them out there together. Like, again, separate vehicles, separate tasks. And that's about it. We're all on call 24/7 for any emergencies, but we can't continue to provide essential services as needed.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, I'd like to acknowledge City Engineer Mark Rincon. There was a member of the community that thought possibly city staff had cut trees near her property and left the brush. And Mark was incredibly responsive and was able to track down the simple fact that it was not city staff, and we closed that loop in less than 2.5 hours, and it really meant a lot to that community member. So thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, could you repeat that? I'm sorry, but I didn't hear what was said.
I just gave you a bunch of praise is all. You can watch the YouTube video.
He said you were a good guy. Okay, next, Susie, could you share with us what's going on in finance?
Hi, I'm virtually outside of the Plank and Bolt and the museum. But our staff is working one at a time at City Hall. We have as many employees working from home as possible, as much as possible. We're still trying to do the essential services, processing payroll, paying the vendor invoices, receiving in the deposits for water and sewer, and making those deposits. We are trying to maintain our distance from each other and disinfecting before and after we leave the office so that the next person that comes in isn't susceptible to anything from the person before. We've placed signage at both the front and the back door asking for employees not to enter if they are feverish or have a cough. And then if they do enter, to maintain the 6-foot distance. We're doing all kinds of webinars trying to stay up on FEMA and how to process for payments of a grant related to this COVID-19. Plus, we're trying to close up the FEMA from the last rainy season. We're also, the state has, or I guess it's maybe federal, has changed the laws related to sick time and Family Medical Leave Act. So we're trying to stay updated on that. Shannon has attended 5 webinars and I've attended 2. So there's a lot to try to absorb, and we're doing the best that we can at doing that. But basically, we are trying to just continue with services as normal as much as possible and maintain our distance.
Thank you, Susie.
And we're going to finish it up with Irene. If you could just share with us all the technology breakthroughs you've been making for us.
Yes, so it has been quite an event. Again, it's testing software to work remotely, and then of course to make the virtual meetings happen and allow access to the public as well. We've also held weekly meetings with the other clerks in Sonoma County where we just kind of share information, whether it's updates or ideas or just thinking of something new that will help us along this emergency. So we're all working together to share information there. And then of course, assisting with the public messaging and on both the internet and Facebook. Still checking in at least twice a week with my part-timer, Sue, just making sure she's okay. And then she's been helping remotely as well. So it's been keeping her busy. So again, just working remotely mostly, but then continuing to ensure that, my mandates, the city's mandates, and we continue the transparent efforts are made and continued.
Gus, I think your mic is still muted.
Yeah, Gus, you need to unmute yourself.
Could you mute your microphone? I want Irene to try and talk again and see if we could eliminate the backwash that we're getting.
Okay.
All right, well, go ahead with it then. Well, David, I'm going to turn it back to you. Staff, I want to thank you for all of your hard work. Like I said, it's not going unnoticed by the City Council. And we really appreciate everything that you're doing, especially keeping City Hall open, yet closed to the public. That's really important that the back work, Susie, that you're doing with your crew gets done. And of course, Chief, you know, performing the day-to-day security of the city is important. And Mark, making sure that the water comes on when we do the spigot, you know, that's always good. So anything else before we move to adjournment?
Well, Mr. Mayor.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you, Mayor, members of council, for your patience with staff. I want to just say that, you know, we have, through this emergency is really put us in an unprecedented situation in terms of trying to address all the aspects of the nature of this virus and how we've had to implement, you know, social distancing protocols. We work in a public arena, so it's made it very challenging for us. But what we really endeavored to do, first and foremost, is protect the health of our staff and our team, all the while continuing to focus on essential activities and public safety. And I want to acknowledge staff for the work that they've done to make sure that we make sure all of the essential services continue to be provided to our residents or in our community and our businesses, but that also to our police chief and our police department, ensuring that public safety is maintained, which we view as so vital. And in doing so, we've also continued to do all the other work that is part of our normal business cycle. I know today, for instance, the finance director and myself were actively working on the landscape and lighting district budgets, which is a mandated legal requirement that we need to ultimately bring forward to councils. So all the while we are working daily on trying to address this emergency pandemic, we're continuing to do all of the normal work tasks and to move things forward as needed to continue to assure that the normal business of the city continues. Our staff continues to answer and respond to phone calls and emails, and we just want to ensure that the community knows that we're there for them, and we're going to do our best in responding to them as needed. It's going to take a lot for us to get through this, but I think we work together with the community and the council. We'll be successful.
Thank you, David. I know you're putting in a lot of hours, so I appreciate it, and I know staff does as well. I see that Councilmember Bagby would like to say something, so please go ahead.
Oh, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I just want to second that sentiment. Is staff is just doing a fantastic job keeping us up and running and safe. And there was inconsistent sound quality in some of the staff remarks. So what I was just going to recommend is that perhaps I'm sure that you have a short report already, your notes already written up. If we could maybe post that on Facebook and or the Cloverdale news page, just so that the public can get an update from each of those departments. I think that would be just to let them know that, this is what each of the departments is working on as far as the immediate crisis is concerned, but also the fact that, each staff member who I talk to, they're also maintaining the regular work that they have to do and looking to the future. So I just think it's important that we get that information out to the public, what each of the department heads tonight.
Thank you. I'm going to come back to all of the city council members, but let's just get through the rest of the agenda if we could. And David, I'm going to give it back to you for manager or city attorney reports. Anything? Jose, anything? Okay. And lastly, council direction for future agenda items. Are there any suggestions from council or staff?
Yeah, I think that format of each of the department heads taking a few minutes to just describe, what they're currently working on, and possibly publishing a short summary either on the website or social media. I just think that would be really helpful, since Public meetings are not public, are easily accessed by the public right now. It's important to push that information out there and let people know, what we're working on their behalf.
Well, I was going to suggest that we actually post this whole report as is. If you have to extract some sensitive stuff out of it, that's fine, but let's post it to the webpage and maybe get it over to Zoe as well, kind of like what's your city doing. So
That would be great, Gus. Thank you.
okay. All right, Councilmember Cruz, would you like to add anything before I adjourn the meeting?
Well, I did submit some information submitted to us by Lucien so that people can access different entities for either business assistance or social services, etc., as well as information about Corazon and what they're doing with the community. They do work a lot with the Cloverdale folks. And if there's anything else that needs to be polished, I will continue to provide. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Brigham, anything for good of the order?
I unmuted. No, there's nothing I have to add.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Turner?
Nothing at this time other than just echoing the gratitude towards city staff. I know you're tiptoeing through a lot right now, so just keep your head up and we really appreciate it.
Okay, staff members, anything to add? Seeing nothing, then I think we'll go ahead and adjourn.
Mr. Mayor, before you adjourn, there are some webinars that all of us could benefit from. So I just advise everybody to kind of check those from the League of Cities. Some of them are free, and the only one that it's charged for is the rural cities, and we should all be engaged in that. So a shout out to Melanie, who's working very hard on that one. Thank you.
I don't think there's any charge for those, but yeah.
It's $25.
Ooh, well, I think we're league members, so I don't think we get charged. But we'll alert Irene if we have to make a payment.
Yes.
I know one that I went on, I did have to pay $25 for, but I just paid for it. Some of them are free, some of them are not.
Yeah.
Okay.
You get reimbursed.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and close the meeting. Actually, I'm going to adjourn it to April the 22nd at 5 p.m. It looks like we might have a closed session. Is that right? Or
It's our standard language.
oh, okay. So we're going to adjourn the city council meeting to April 22nd at 5 p.m. Thank you, everyone. Staff, thank you so much. Let's just carry on. Thank you.
Good night.